My daily time of prayer has changed since lockdown first began last March. As I do not have to now rush out of the house first thing in the morning, I have extra time to spend with the Lord. I aim to read the Bible first thing in the morning. I shut the door of the room that I'm in so that I'm not going to get distracted by anyone or disturbed. First of all, I pray and ask God to speak to me through His Word. And then I go through a reading plan and I read the Bible. And after that, I just sit in His presence and just make myself available to Him. My mind does wander from time to time, but I do try to stay focused on the Lord. And then I bring my needs to Him. And if I'm a bit rushed at this time, I might bring my prayer requests later on when I go for a walk.
Prayer for me is a mixture of sort of structured prayer times and also the sort of ad hoc relationship prayers, as I call them. But they are all governed really by a prompt because I'm not very good at just praying without a prompt. And so my day starts off with weekdays reading my Bible, and there's a prayer at the end. I also have times where obviously we pray as a church in prayer meetings. I have a prayer partner every week who prompts me to pray. And also in things like home group, we pray for each other as well. So that's the more structured times. Matt also prompts me to pray late at night or in bed, and I fall asleep probably half the time. But they're the sort of structured prayers. But I would say the real prayer for me is the relationship prayers, and that's, as you're driving along in the car, you see somebody that you know, and you just pray for them sort of on the spur of the moment. Perhaps you're listening to a worship song, again in the car. My car journeys are really important for prayer for me, where you just have that spontaneous prayer. Other people say, can you pray for this? And I'm so rubbish at remembering to do that I now put it in my phone, and my phone gives me a prompt to pray. And that's been really helpful for me.
So I think during lockdown, we spent a lot of time, or at least I have, speaking for me, I spent a lot of time listening to, praying through worship music, or listening to sermons online, or calling people to pray with them. And I think that's been really helpful and really good. But one thing that I've found, I think particularly helpful and effective has been just praying, just reading a bit of the Bible without anything else, just trying to block other things out and just have me sit down with the Word and take that in. What God directly wants to say to me, what does He want me to hear? And then praying about that afterwards. And I think, just the Word. I think sometimes it's easy to underestimate how useful just the Bible is.
There's a verse in 1 Peter that says, cast your anxiety upon the Lord because He cares for you. And I find that I pray, but the problem is I'm a bit of a worrier. So although I prayed for things or friends, I still find that I'm worrying about them. So I came up with the idea of a prayer box. In my prayer box, I have a cross, and I have some cards upon which I've written the names of friends, family, situations, places that I want to pray for. So I'll go through and I'll pray for these situations, and I put them in my box. Then at the end, I put my cross in the box on top, and I close the box. And in doing this, I'm entrusting each of these situations and people to the Lord. I know He can look after them far better than I can.
I wanted to say something about prayer in those dark times and places that we all find ourselves in from time to time, and particularly in this last year or so for so many of us. I've been in some really dark places over the last 7 years since my son Dan died, and my experience of prayer in those places hasn't always been God bringing light into the darkness. Sometimes it is just dark, but God has always been there, however deep and however dark. prayer in those times and places, for me, has no words. It's just being in the dark, held by God.
Being a part of the Emmanuel Prayer and Fasting group has been such a blessing to me personally. I have grown in the discipline of fasting, in learning to abstain and train my mind on God and just focus. I've also felt like a strong part of a community of church members just lifting up church needs to God, which has been a blessing and a real joy. I haven't done very well with not having coffee in the morning. The giving up of coffee on fasting days was and is a struggle. But in all, it's been a real blessing.
Okay, so 1 minute on the prayer meeting that we have at school. It's a staff parent prayer meeting. We meet 6 times a year. We tend to pray to begin with. We give a quick introduction, a quick verse from the Bible, maybe something from Psalms. Then we give thanks to God. And then we look at things that are coming up in the future. Pray for those. Could be events, could be trips, could be any particular exams or something like that. And then we get a time to actually pray for the actual Christian groups in the school, which is incredibly supportive. One of the most beautiful things about Trinity is that it's very multicultural. That's reflected also in the parent staff prayer meeting as well. And so you get various church styles being represented. And so the prayers can be really short bullet points, or they can be very eloquent, or they can be really charismatic. And that makes for some fun sharing at times. Most of all, though, I feel very, very supported.